November 15, 1944, 0430 hours, Hŭrtgen Forest, Germany. Major Yuki Tanaka lowered her binoculars, surveying the pre-dawn mist that clung to the dense trees surrounding her command bunker. Her elite regiment of 3,000 soldiers had transformed this section of forest into an impenetrable fortress. "The Americans will never break through these defenses," she whispered to her executive officer. "Not with 1,000 men, not with 10,000. Little did she know, in precisely 72 hours her position would fall not to overwhelming numbers, but to a secret weapon the Japanese military had never encountered: time-on-target artillery coordination. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Through the observation slit of her reinforced concrete command bunker, buried beneath 12 feet of earth and timber, Tanaka assessed defenses that represented the pinnacle of Japanese military engineering transplanted to German soil. Her Special Forces regiment, comprised of Japan's most experienced combat veterans, occupied positions that had taken months to construct. Every angle calculated, every field of fire interlocking, every approach covered by pre-registered artillery coordinates. The Americans advancing toward her fortress had no comprehension they were marching into the most concentrated defensive position in the European theater. The Hŭrtgen Forest measured approximately 5 square miles of dense woodland. Into this space, Japanese engineers working alongside German counterparts had concentrated defensive power that would have impressed the builders of the Siegfried Line itself. The statistics were staggering: over 120 reinforced bunkers, 22 artillery positions hidden beneath camouflage netting, 60 mortar pits, and more than 300 machine gun nests arranged in 3 defensive belts, each protecting the others in patterns that eliminated any safe approach corridor. The construction itself represented a masterpiece of military engineering and cultural exchange. Each major bunker consisted of reinforced concrete walls up to 6 feet thick, created from a special formula Japanese engineers had perfected in Pacific Island fortifications. Layered over these concrete shells were massive timber reinforcements, oak trunks 24 inches in diameter that could absorb tremendous explosive force. Steel plates salvaged from damaged German tanks provided additional protection for firing ports. The entire complex was then buried beneath earth and stone, in some places 15 feet deep, which diffused explosive force better than any manufactured material. Major Tanaka had personally supervised the defensive preparations for 9 weeks. Having studied American tactics from combat reports across both theaters, she had designed defenses specifically to counter standard U.S. assault protocols. Her bunkers were positioned to create crossfire zones that would trap American infantry in killing fields with no cover. Artillery positions were staggered at different elevations to create 3-dimensional fire grids that could simultaneously target ground, slope, and ridge positions. "The Americans rely on brute force," she told her officers during the morning briefing. "They depend on overwhelming artillery followed by a massive infantry assault. But our positions can withstand their bombardment, and our interlocking fields of fire will decimate their infantry. They cannot possibly coordinate enough firepower to suppress all our positions simultaneously." November 14, 1944. U.S. Army Headquarters, 30 miles west of Hŭrtgen Forest. Colonel Elizabeth Winters stood before a tactical map studying intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture. The upcoming offensive had encountered an unexpected obstacle. An elite Japanese regiment operating alongside German forces had created defensive positions of unprecedented sophistication in the Hŭrtgen Forest. "The intelligence is conclusive," Winters informed her staff. "Major Tanaka's regiment has constructed what might be the most formidable defensive network we've encountered in Europe. Aerial photography shows extensive bunker systems that match Pacific theater construction techniques. We're facing a hybrid defense, combining Japanese fortification methods with German tactical doctrine." Major Tanaka has never faced time-on-target artillery coordination. The Japanese military has no experience with this technique, and we have confirmation their signals intelligence hasn't intercepted information about its development. Time-on-target was a revolutionary artillery innovation developed by American military engineers in 1943. Rather than firing artillery batteries in sequence, which allowed defenders to seek cover between salvos. Time on target calculated the different flight times of shells fired from various distances so that all rounds would impact simultaneously. The psychological and tactical effect was devastating. Hundreds of artillery shells landing in a precise area within a 3-second window, giving defenders no warning and no time to reach shelters. "We'll deploy 18 artillery batteries," Winters continued, "positioned at varying distances from the target. Each battery will fire at a precisely calculated moment, compensating for shell travel time. The Japanese defensive doctrine relies on sheltering during initial bombardment, then returning to positions as the artillery lifts. They've never encountered a scenario where all shells arrive simultaneously with no warning interval." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. November 15th, 1944, at 0700 hours, Major Tanaka received reports of American troop movements several miles from her position. Intercepted radio traffic suggested a standard assault formation, artillery preparation, followed by infantry advance. She ordered her forces to initiate standard countermeasures. Artillery crews would shelter during initial bombardment, then emerge to target advancing infantry. Machine gunners would move to secondary positions as American artillery focused on primary bunkers. Mortar teams would pre-register on likely advance routes. "Their predictability is their weakness," she told her senior officers. "American doctrine hasn't evolved since North Africa. They telegraphed their intentions through standardized assault procedures." The confidence among her staff was absolute. Their defensive network had been designed specifically to counter American tactics observed across both European and Pacific theaters. Most importantly, their artillery observation posts had clear views of all approach routes. Any American advance would be detected and subjected to devastating pre-registered fire before reaching the main defensive belt. What Tanaka couldn't know was that Colonel Winters had deployed a new weapon no Japanese commander had ever faced. The SCR-584 radar system coupled with proximity fuses. This combination allowed American artillery to target Japanese positions with unprecedented accuracy, even through the dense forest canopy. And proximity fuses would detonate shells precisely above bunker positions for maximum effect. November 16, 1944, at 0500 hours. Final preparations for the American assault were completed under darkness. The 18 artillery batteries had been positioned at carefully calculated distances from Tanaka's main command bunker. Fire direction centers had computed precise firing times for each battery, accounting for differences in shell flight time. The calculations were so complex, they required a new generation of mechanical calculators developed specifically for artillery coordination. Colonel Winters gathered her battalion commanders for final briefing. "The time on target strike will commence at 0600 precisely. All 18 batteries will impact Major Tanaka's command center simultaneously. The Japanese have no experience with this technique, and their defensive doctrine provides no countermeasure for it. The psychological impact of 432 shells landing within 3 seconds will be our decisive advantage." The confidence in American voices contrasted sharply with the certainty in Major Tanaka's bunker just 5 miles away. Both commanders absolutely believed in the superiority of their tactical approach. Both were convinced the other side had no effective counter to their methods. In just over an hour, one of them would be proven catastrophically wrong. November 16, 1944, at 0552 hours. Inside her command bunker, Major Tanaka reviewed the morning intelligence report. American radio traffic had increased significantly, suggesting preparatory communications for an artillery barrage. She ordered standard countermeasures, all personnel to shelter positions, artillery observation posts to track American battery locations for counter-battery fire. "They'll begin with a rolling barrage," she predicted to her staff.
20 to 30 minutes of artillery preparation, moving from our forward positions toward the rear. Once it lifts, they'll advance infantry under covering fire. Standard American doctrine. Her officers nodded in agreement. They had all studied American tactics extensively. The pattern was consistent across all theaters, predictable, methodical, and vulnerable to prepared countermeasures. What none of them realized was that Colonel Winters was about to rewrite the rulebook of modern artillery warfare. November 16, 1944. 0600 hours, precisely. The forest surrounding Major Tanaka's command bunker erupted in a single devastating explosion as 432 artillery shells impacted within a 3-second window. There was no warning barrage, no initial rounds allowing defenders to seek shelter, no pattern of fire moving across defensive positions, just instant, overwhelming destruction concentrated in a precise target area. The effect was unlike anything Japanese defenders had experienced in any previous combat. The simultaneous impact created a pressure wave that collapsed bunkers designed to withstand sequential bombardment. The sound alone was psychologically devastating, not the familiar rolling thunder of conventional artillery, but a single deafening crack that seemed to split the world apart. Inside her command bunker, Major Tanaka was thrown violently against the reinforced wall as the structure, despite its 6-foot concrete walls, shook like a child's toy. Communications equipment shattered, maps tore from walls, and support timbers cracked under stresses they were never designed to withstand. The lights failed instantly, plunging the command center into darkness, broken only by emergency lanterns that cast ghastly shadows across shocked faces. "What was that?" her executive officer gasped, blood streaming from a head wound where falling debris had struck him. "That's impossible. All their batteries firing at once?" Major Tanaka, drawing on years of combat experience, recognized immediately what had happened. "Time coordination," she whispered, the tactical implications unfolding in her mind with terrible clarity. "They've synchronized their fire, all batteries striking simultaneously." Before she could issue new orders, a second time-on-target strike hit their secondary command post 400 yards to the north. Again, hundreds of shells landed within seconds, obliterating defensive positions that had never been designed to withstand such concentrated force. The Japanese defensive doctrine, which relied on sheltering during a rolling barrage, then returning to fighting positions as the artillery lifted, had no answer for an attack that delivered its entire destructive power in a single overwhelming moment. The communications network, another pride of Tanaka's defensive system, collapsed immediately. Field telephones went silent as lines were severed by the concentrated explosions. Radio antennas collapsed. Runner routes were rendered impassable by craters and fallen trees. Each defensive position, designed to support others in an integrated network, suddenly found itself isolated, operating without coordination. November 16, 1944. 0612 hours. The third time-on-target strike targeted the Japanese artillery positions. Again, hundreds of shells landing simultaneously, but now with proximity fuses that detonated precisely above gun emplacements, showering crews with lethal fragments even within partial cover. Japanese artillery doctrine had no protocol for this scenario. Their gun crews had been trained to shelter during incoming fire, then rapidly return to their positions to counter American infantry advance. The time-on-target technique gave them no opportunity to implement this training. In her damaged command bunker, Major Tanaka struggled to comprehend the tactical situation. Reports were fragmentary, communication systems destroyed. The carefully constructed defensive network, designed to operate as an integrated system with each position supporting others, had been shattered into isolated pockets, unable to coordinate their fire or movements. "They've changed the rules," she told her remaining staff officers. "This isn't the artillery doctrine they've used before. They've developed a new technique specifically to counter our defensive approach." The realization came too late. A fourth time-on-target strike, this one targeting the forward defensive belt, landed with the same devastating simultaneity. Japanese machine gunners, trained to move between primary and secondary positions during conventional bombardment, found both positions destroyed simultaneously before they could react. November 16, 1944, 0630 hours.
Colonel Winters, observing from an advanced position, received the initial damage assessment. The time-on-target strikes had achieved destruction far beyond expectations. Japanese defensive positions, designed to withstand conventional bombardment, had collapsed under the unprecedented concentration of force. More importantly, the psychological effect on defenders had been profound. The simultaneous impact created confusion and disorientation that conventional artillery never produced. "Begin the infantry advance," she ordered. "Maintain time-on-target suppression on their remaining strong points. They have no defense against this technique and no experience in countering it." The American infantry, advancing behind a rolling sequence of time-on-target strikes, encountered significantly less resistance than intelligence had predicted. Japanese defensive positions, designed to deliver interlocking fields of fire, found themselves unable to coordinate as communications failed and observation posts were destroyed. The defensive network, so carefully designed to counter conventional attacks, had no answer for this new American artillery doctrine. Major Tanaka, gathering what information she could from runners who occasionally reached her damaged command post, realized the full extent of the disaster. Her defensive system, based on principles that had proven effective against conventional attacks, was collapsing against a technique she had never encountered. The Americans had changed the fundamental equation of artillery warfare, and she had no counter to offer. "Their artillery coordination has achieved what their numbers could not," she told her executive officer. "They've developed a method to deliver the maximum concentration of force at the precise moment of tactical advantage. Our defenses were designed for an enemy that no longer exists." November 16, 1944, 1400 hours. By early afternoon, American forces had penetrated 2 defensive belts, advancing with casualties far below predicted levels. Japanese resistance remained determined but uncoordinated, each position fighting in isolation without the supporting fire that the defensive network had been designed to provide. Colonel Winters, directing operations from a forward command post, continued to employ time-on-target strikes against identified strongpoints. Each strike produced the same devastating effect: simultaneous impact that gave defenders no warning and no opportunity to implement their trained responses. "The Japanese defensive doctrine has no answer for this technique," she informed division headquarters. "Their entire approach is based on anticipating a sequential bombardment that allows them to shelter, then return to positions. Time on target gives them no interval to exploit. We're observing disintegration of their defensive network at rates far exceeding our most optimistic projections." In her increasingly isolated command bunker, Major Tanaka faced the unraveling of everything she had believed about defensive warfare. The principles she had studied and implemented, proven effective in countless engagements across 2 theaters, had been rendered obsolete by an American innovation she hadn't known existed. "They've achieved a revolution in artillery doctrine," she admitted to her staff. "Not through superior numbers or firepower, but through coordination and timing. They've solved a problem we didn't know existed." November 16, 1944, 1800 hours. As darkness fell, American forces had secured 3/5 of the contested forest. Japanese resistance continued, but had lost the coordinated effectiveness that had made their defensive network so formidable. Individual positions fought with characteristic determination, but without the integrated support that their defensive doctrine required. Colonel Winters, directing operations from a forward command post, continued to employ time-on-target strikes against identified strongpoints. Each strike produced the same devastating effect:
simultaneous impact that gave defenders no warning and no opportunity to implement their trained responses. The Japanese defensive doctrine has no answer for this technique, she informed division headquarters. Their entire approach is based on anticipating a sequential bombardment that allows them to shelter, then return to positions. Time on target gives them no interval to exploit. We're observing disintegration of their defensive network at rates far exceeding our most optimistic projections. In her increasingly isolated command bunker, Major Tanaka faced the unraveling of everything she had believed about defensive warfare. The principles she had studied and implemented, proven effective in countless engagements across 2 theaters, had been rendered obsolete by an American innovation she hadn't known existed. They've achieved a revolution in artillery doctrine, she admitted to her staff. Not through superior numbers or firepower, but through coordination and timing. They've solved a problem we didn't know existed. November 16th, 1944, 1800 hours. As darkness fell, American forces had secured 3/5 of the contested forest. Japanese resistance continued, but had lost the coordinated effectiveness that had made their defensive network so formidable. Individual positions fought with characteristic determination, but without the integrated support that their defensive doctrine required. Colonel Winters, reviewing the day's progress, recognized that they had achieved something beyond tactical victory. "We've demonstrated the future of artillery warfare," she told her staff. "Time-on-target coordination has fundamentally changed the equation. No defensive system, however well designed, can withstand the concentration of force it delivers." The night brought desperate Japanese counterattacks, launched without the artillery support that had been neutralized by the American innovation. Each attack, though executed with fanatical courage, lacked the coordinated firepower needed to dislodge American positions. By dawn, the counteroffensive had collapsed with heavy Japanese casualties. November 17th, 1944, 0600 hours.
The final American assault began with another series of time-on-target strikes targeting the remaining Japanese strongpoints. Again, hundreds of shells landed simultaneously, overwhelming defenses designed for conventional bombardment. The psychological effect continued to be as important as the physical destruction. Japanese defenders, unable to anticipate or counter this form of attack, experienced a disorientation that conventional artillery never produced. Major Tanaka's remaining command structure was collapsing around her. What had once been an impregnable fortress was now a shattered landscape of isolated defensive positions. As she peered through a cracked periscope, she witnessed American infantry advancing with confidence that would have been suicidal just 24 hours earlier. "They're moving in standard formations," her intelligence officer noted with disbelief. "No special tactics, no exceptional maneuvers. They simply advance as if our defenses no longer exist." "Because effectively, they don't," Tanaka replied, the bitter truth settling over her. "Our defensive network was designed as an integrated system, each position supporting others, fields of fire overlapping, observation posts directing artillery. The Americans didn't defeat our individual positions. They severed the connections between them. They attacked the system itself, not its components." The realization came with painful clarity. Her regiment had prepared for every conventional assault scenario: infantry waves, tank formations, even airborne landings. But they had never considered an artillery technique that could deliver such concentrated force with such precise timing. Time on target had rendered obsolete defensive doctrines perfected through decades of Japanese military experience. November 17th, 1944, 0900 hours. Colonel Winters advanced her command post as American forces secured additional territory. The reports exceeded even her most optimistic projections. time-on-target coordination had achieved destruction far beyond conventional artillery capability. Not just physically, but psychologically. Japanese defenders, trained to react to sequential bombardment, found themselves disoriented by simultaneous impact that gave no warning and allowed no time to implement practiced responses. "We've changed the fundamental equation," she told her battalion commanders. "Their defensive doctrine relies on anticipating a pattern we no longer follow. Every training scenario they've rehearsed assumes artillery fires in sequence. We've rendered their entire defensive philosophy obsolete with a single innovation." The advance continued with momentum that intelligence analysts had considered impossible against such formidable defenses. Japanese positions, designed to withstand conventional assault, proved vulnerable to the concentrated force delivered by time-on-target strikes. More importantly, the precision timing prevented defenders from moving between primary and secondary positions as they'd been trained to do. November 17, 1944, 1100 hours. Major Tanaka received increasingly desperate reports from her remaining outposts. American forces had penetrated the third defensive belt, advancing at a pace that military doctrine declared impossible against prepared positions. Her artillery commander reported that counter-battery fire had become ineffective. American batteries fired so briefly and with such precise coordination that Japanese radar couldn't locate them before they repositioned. "They've achieved surprise without stealth," Tanaka told her remaining officers. "Their innovation isn't technological superiority or overwhelming numbers. It's coordination and timing. They've solved the most fundamental problem of artillery warfare: how to concentrate maximum force at the precise moment of tactical advantage." Her executive officer, wounded but still functional, studied the fragmented reports. "Our defensive network was designed to absorb conventional bombardment, allow defenders to shelter, then return to positions as artillery lifted. We never considered a scenario where all shells would arrive simultaneously. Because no one has ever done it before. Not the Germans, not the British, not even our own artillery divisions. The Americans have developed something entirely new, and we're witnessing the birth of a revolution in warfare. We've demonstrated that defensive evolution requires offensive innovation," she told her artillery coordinator. The Japanese perfected a defensive system based on every artillery doctrine they'd ever faced. We defeated it not by matching their preparation, but by changing the rules of engagement. The time-on-target technique was proving even more effective than its developers had predicted. The precise coordination of multiple batteries to deliver simultaneous impact had transformed artillery from a suppression weapon into a decisive offensive tool. Japanese defenders, unable to anticipate or counter this approach, found their carefully constructed defensive network disintegrating around them. November 17, 1944, 1500 hours. In her increasingly isolated command bunker, Major Tanaka faced the collapse of everything she had believed about defensive warfare. The principles she had studied and implemented, proven effective against conventional attacks, had been rendered obsolete by an American innovation she hadn't known existed. "Their achievement isn't firepower," she told her remaining staff, "it's coordination. They've solved a problem we didn't recognize existed. While we focused on hardening our positions against conventional bombardment, they developed a method to render that hardening irrelevant." The reports from her forward positions grew increasingly dire. American infantry, advancing behind precisely coordinated time-on-target strikes, were penetrating defenses that should have been impregnable. The defensive network, designed to operate as an integrated system, had been shattered into isolated components unable to support each other. "They've changed the fundamental nature of artillery warfare," Tanaka admitted, "not through superior numbers or firepower, but through timing and coordination. They've achieved a revolution in military doctrine while we were perfecting our response to the previous generation of tactics. November 17, 1944, 1700 hours. As daylight faded, American forces had secured 4/5 of the contested forest. Japanese resistance continued, but had lost the coordinated effectiveness that had made their defensive network so formidable. Individual positions fought with characteristic determination, but without the integrated support that their defensive doctrine required. Colonel Winters, reviewing the day's progress, recognized that they had achieved something beyond tactical victory. "We've demonstrated the future of artillery warfare," she told her staff. "Time-on-target coordination has fundamentally changed the equation. No defensive system, however well designed, can withstand the concentration of force it delivers." The night brought desperate Japanese counterattacks, launched without the artillery support that had been neutralized by the American innovation. Each attack, though executed with fanatical courage, lacked the coordinated firepower needed to dislodge American positions. By dawn, the counteroffensive had collapsed with heavy Japanese casualties. November 18, 1944, 0600 hours. The final American assault began with another series of time-on-target strikes targeting the remaining Japanese strongpoints. Again, hundreds of shells landed simultaneously, overwhelming defenses designed for conventional bombardment. The psychological effect continued to be as important as the physical destruction. Japanese defenders, unable to anticipate or counter this form of attack, experienced a disorientation that conventional artillery never produced. Major Tanaka, observing from what remained of her command bunker, witnessed the disintegration of her defensive network with the clarity that comes from accepting inevitable defeat. "They've achieved what we thought impossible," she told her executive officer. "Not through superior numbers or firepower, but through innovation. They found the fundamental weakness in our defensive philosophy, our assumption that artillery would always follow predictable patterns." The American advance continued with momentum that defied conventional military wisdom. Positions that should have held for weeks fell in hours. Defensive belts designed to slow attackers to a crawl were breached in a single day. The Japanese regiment, considered elite even among special forces, found itself outmaneuvered not by superior tactics, but by an innovation they had never anticipated. November 18, 1944, 0900 hours. Colonel Winters received confirmation that Major Tanaka's command bunker had been located. The final time-on-target strike would target this position, bringing 18 artillery batteries simultaneously on a single point. The calculations had been refined over 3 days of operations, achieving a level of precision that artillery experts had previously considered impossible. "This strike will demonstrate the full potential of the technique," she told her artillery coordinator.
Every shell landing within a 3-second window. Maximum concentration of force at the precise moment of tactical advantage. The strike, when it came, exceeded even their refined expectations. Hundreds of shells landed simultaneously, creating a single overwhelming explosion that collapsed Tanaka's command bunker despite its reinforced construction. The pressure wave alone destroyed supporting structures that conventional bombardment would have merely damaged. November 18, 1944, 1100 hours. The battle for Hŭrtgen Forest effectively ended with the fall of Major Tanaka's command center. Japanese resistance continued in isolated pockets, but without the coordination that had made their defensive network so formidable. By midday, American forces controlled 90% of the contested territory, advancing against resistance that intelligence analysts had predicted would hold for weeks. Colonel Winters, establishing her command post in what had been the Japanese central position, surveyed the battlefield with the satisfaction of validation. Time-on-target coordination had achieved what conventional tactics could not: the rapid defeat of a defensive network designed specifically to counter traditional American assault methods. "We've witnessed the birth of a new era in artillery warfare," she told her staff.
The Japanese defensive doctrine was perfect against the enemy they expected to face, but we changed the nature of the engagement. We didn't fight the battle they prepared for. In the wreckage of her command bunker, Major Tanaka was found alive but severely wounded. As American medics treated her injuries, she requested a meeting with the officer who had orchestrated her defeat. When Colonel Winters arrived, Tanaka offered the professional respect of one warrior to another. "You achieved what I believed impossible," she said through a translator. "Not through superior numbers or firepower, but through innovation. You found the one vulnerability in our defensive philosophy, our assumption that artillery would always follow patterns we could anticipate and counter." Colonel Winters acknowledged the assessment. "Your defensive network was brilliantly designed against conventional assault, but we didn't conduct a conventional assault. Time-on-target coordination changed the fundamental nature of artillery warfare." "You've demonstrated something beyond tactical victory," Tanaka replied. "You've shown that defensive evolution requires offensive innovation. While we perfected our response to the previous generation of tactics, you created the next generation. That is the truest form of military genius." The consequences of the Hŭrtgen Forest battle extended far beyond the tactical victory. Military observers from both Allied and Axis powers recognized that time-on-target coordination had fundamentally changed artillery warfare. No defensive system, however well designed, could withstand the concentrated force delivered by multiple batteries firing with such precise timing. November 20th, 1944, U.S. Army Headquarters. Colonel Winters presented her after-action report to assembled senior officers, including representatives from British, French, and Soviet military delegations. The report detailed how time-on-target coordination had achieved effects far beyond conventional artillery capability. The Japanese defensive network in Hŭrtgen Forest represented the pinnacle of fortification design. Every position reinforced, every approach covered by interlocking fields of fire, every potential attack anticipated and countered. By all conventional military analysis, it should have withstood our assault for weeks, possibly months. The assembled officers studied the casualty statistics with disbelief. American forces had suffered fewer than 500 casualties, taking a position that intelligence analysts had predicted would cost over 2,000. Japanese defenders had been virtually annihilated, with casualties exceeding 90%. The key insight wasn't about firepower, it was about timing and coordination. Time-on-target coordination changed the fundamental nature of artillery warfare. The Japanese had prepared for a type of battle we simply didn't fight. The implications extended beyond the immediate tactical victory. Time-on-target coordination represented a revolution in artillery doctrine that rendered existing defensive philosophies obsolete. No fortification system, however sophisticated, could withstand the concentrated force delivered by multiple batteries firing with such precise timing. We've entered a new era in warfare, one where coordination and timing matter more than raw firepower or numerical superiority. The Japanese defenders never knew American artillery had time-on-target coordination. By the time they recognized what they were facing, their defensive network had already collapsed. December 1, 1944. Tokyo, Imperial Japanese Army Headquarters. The battle assessment report from Hŭrtgen Forest arrived on General Hideki Tojo's desk with a classification that indicated its strategic importance. The analysis, compiled by military intelligence experts, contained findings that challenged fundamental Japanese defensive doctrine. The Americans have achieved a revolutionary advance in artillery coordination, the report stated. Time-on-target technique delivers unprecedented concentration of force with psychological effects our defensive doctrine cannot counter. Traditional fortification methods prove ineffective against this approach. General Tojo, studying the detailed analysis of Major Tanaka's defeat, recognized the strategic implications extended far beyond a single battle. "They've rendered our defensive philosophy obsolete," he told his staff. "Not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through innovation in coordination and timing." The Japanese military, renowned for its defensive engineering, faced a capability they had no immediate counter for. Time-on-target coordination had transformed artillery from a suppression weapon into a decisive offensive tool. Fortifications designed to withstand conventional bombardment proved catastrophically vulnerable to the concentrated force delivered by multiple batteries firing with such precise timing. January 15, 1945. U.S. Army Artillery School, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The lessons from Hŭrtgen Forest had been formalized into a new training curriculum that would transform American artillery doctrine. Time-on-target coordination, proven in combat against the most sophisticated defensive network encountered in the European theater, became standard procedure for all artillery units. "The revolution isn't technological," the training manual stated. "It's conceptual. Time-on-target changes the fundamental equation of artillery warfare. By delivering maximum concentration of force at the precise moment of tactical advantage, it achieves effects that conventional artillery cannot match." The manual included a quote from Major Tanaka, captured after the battle. "We prepared for the enemy we expected to face. You defeated us by becoming an enemy we couldn't have anticipated. That is the essence of military innovation." February 10, 1945. Colonel Winters, promoted to Brigadier General for her achievement at Hŭrtgen Forest, addressed graduating artillery officers at Fort Sill. Her presentation focused not on the technical aspects of time-on-target coordination, but on the broader principle it represented. The Japanese defensive network in Hŭrtgen Forest was a masterpiece of military engineering, she told the assembled officers. Every position reinforced, every approach covered by interlocking fields of fire, every potential attack anticipated and countered. By all conventional military analysis, it should have withstood our assault for weeks, possibly months. But we didn't conduct a conventional assault, she continued. Time-on-target coordination changed the fundamental nature of the engagement. We didn't defeat their defensive network by matching their preparation. We defeated it by changing the rules of engagement. The graduates absorbed the lesson that would define their generation of military leadership. True innovation comes not from incremental improvements to existing methods, but from conceptual leaps that transform the nature of conflict itself. Major Tanaka and her regiment weren't defeated by superior numbers or firepower. They were defeated by an idea they hadn't considered possible. That is the essence of military innovation. Not fighting the enemy's battle better than they do, but fighting a battle they don't recognize until it's too late. The legacy of Hŭrtgen Forest extended beyond World War II, influencing military doctrine worldwide. Time-on-target coordination became standard procedure for all modern artillery forces. The principle it represented, that offensive innovation can render defensive evolution obsolete, became a fundamental tenet of strategic thinking. Major Tanaka, after recovering from her wounds and repatriation following the war, became a military theorist whose writings emphasized the lesson she had learned at such cost. The most dangerous enemy is not the one with superior numbers or technology, but the one who changes the rules of engagement. While we perfect our response to the previous generation of tactics, true innovators are creating the next generation. The battle for Hŭrtgen Forest stands as one of the most important engagements in modern military history, not for the territory gained, but for the revolution in warfare it demonstrated. The Japanese defenders never knew American artillery had time-on-target coordination until it was too late, a lesson in how innovation can render even the most sophisticated preparation irrelevant.
The story of Colonel Winters and Major Tanaka became standard curriculum at military academies worldwide, teaching future officers that true strategic advantage comes not from perfecting existing methods, but from conceptual innovations that transform the very nature of conflict. Their encounter in that German forest represented more than a tactical engagement. It marked the birth of modern artillery doctrine and demonstrated how a single innovation can render obsolete defensive philosophies perfected over decades. In military circles, the phrase Hŭrtgen moment came to describe the instant when one realizes that the rules of engagement have fundamentally changed, when what was once considered impossible becomes devastatingly real. It stands as a reminder that in warfare, as in all human endeavors, the most dangerous assumption is that tomorrow's challenges will resemble yesterday's. The ultimate lesson of Hŭrtgen Forest transcends military history. It demonstrates that human innovation can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, that ingenuity can triumph over preparation, and that no defensive system, however perfect, can withstand an offensive that changes the fundamental nature of engagement. In 72 hours, Colonel Winters and her time-on-target artillery had not just captured a forest, they had transformed the future of warfare. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.